The world's largest software company, Oracle, is laying off thousands of employees. Guys, AI is having an insanely massive impact on everyone, every job, everywhere. In this case, Oracle is cutting 10% of its Indian staff, 2,800 people total. But it doesn't stop there. They're laying off hundreds of workers in San Francisco. They're laying off hundreds more in Washington State. And this isn't even a new thing. Guys, in March of this year, Oracle laid off 11,000 employees. That's just this year in March. But it didn't even end there. Their first chief security officer, Mary Ann Davidson, stepped down after nearly 40 years. So you can see that things are shifting. But what's really crazy is this actually came after a massive growth quarter. Guys, Oracle is growing like crazy. So if they're growing, you would think that they need more employees. They actually, this is crazy, guys. They came off 15.9 billion in Q4 fiscal revenue, which is 11% increase year over year, and a 52% year-to-date stock surge. Guys, Oracle is growing like crazy, and they're also laying off workers. Why? Can you fill in the blanks here? Guys, AI is taking over everything. And one of the things I hear a lot on the channel is that AI isn't real, that it's always an Indian. Guys, Oracle is laying off 11,000 Indian workers. So I don't know how you can actually I don't know how you can square that circle. You know, I just don't, you can't scapegoat this, guys. You need to be learning, investing, and involving yourself in AI now before it's too late. That's what this channel is all about. I want to give you the most recent news, the most relevant news, so you as a man can stay relevant, respected, and financially free as we go through this AI revolution. So if that sounds like you, if that's interesting to you, do me a favor, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and share this with someone else that might be interested, all right? Because what is happening with Oracle, it signifies a massive shift. Massive record profits, also layoffs at the same time. Why is that? Well, we're going to talk about in today's video. Today, we're going to cover the government's impact, AI's impact, the implications to American jobs, and what you can do to prepare. So we're going to hit these major topics, and this is just so big, guys. I just am kind of perplexed as to why not as many people are talking about this as they could. So anyway, this is fascinating to me. It's like all I talk about. It drives my wife a little bit crazy because all I'm ever talking about is AI and the workforce and what's going to happen to men. And it drives her a little bit crazy, but at least I have YouTube and we can kind of chat and talk about it here. So let's talk about the government impact. So days before the layoffs were announced, the CEO, Larry Wilson, met with Donald Trump about domestic hiring, reduced offshoring, and data security. So say what you want about Trump, but you know, he's definitely an America first type of guy. He wants more jobs here in America. And that essentially is where this conversation happened. You know, you can, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can now bring on H-1B visa. He wants to really not necessarily eliminate, but make it much more difficult for large companies to just offshore all their labor. And so Trump is saying, hey, you want an H-1B visa, it's going to cost you $500,000. You're not going to be hiring, you know, a basic tech worker in a call center at $500,000, $500,000. You're just not going to do that. You might hire some really high tier talent like we've been seeing with companies like Meta. In fact, I actually recorded an entire video on what Meta is doing. They are just paying hundreds of millions of dollars for top tier talent. You're not going to do that for your average worker, but you might do that for some top tier talent, which quite frankly, when we want those guys here, you know, we want those guys in the United States. We want the top AI engineers and top developers here in the United States. We want you. The architects, we want you here. All right. At any rate, what else happened here with this government meeting? So also after the government meeting, there was Oracle came to a deal with OpenAI to build AI infrastructure under the name Project Stargate. And there's a goal to invest $500 billion into AI infrastructure. And I've been talking about this a lot on the channel also recently, guys, is the investments into AI infrastructure is absolutely insane. Hundreds of billions of dollars are going into building data centers, power, cooling, all the infrastructure that goes around that. I mean, the investments are absolutely huge. And some people say it's a scam, it's a bubble. I tend to think not. Although there are certainly companies that are just slapping AI on their door and saying we're worth, $100 million, when in fact all your top talent has been poached by Meta and you're kind of worthless now. So anyway, Oracle has this $500 billion deal kind of set up to go and build all this AI infrastructure. It requires, Trump is requiring basically that they have massive US-based data centers. And obviously that meeting with Trump signals a reduction in offshoring and H-1B visa program. Trump wants the jobs back here in America. He wants to make America great again. He wants the jobs back here in America, and he's basically telling the companies, if you bring the jobs back here in America, I'm going to go easy on you. If you don't, it's going to be hard going. That's what all this tariff stuff is about. I'm not going to go into all those details, but I think we can all agree that that's kind of Trump's main push is American jobs, right? Although there's some things he's not going to be able to control, like AI's impact on the workforce directly. In any event, he wants investment in infrastructure here in the United States, manufacturing, power, data centers, et cetera, et cetera. And so anyway, that's what Oracle's doing. So if they're going to be building all this stuff, if they're having record profits, why are they laying people off? Why? Well, let's talk about AI's impact. Okay? Critics say that instead of AI taking human jobs, companies are allocating more capital towards AI data center expansions and effectively cutting their staffing budgets. Well, what does that mean? Well, they need to get the money from somewhere, so instead of paying their people, they're allocating their revenue that they're generating, they're allocating investments from other companies and investors and VC into the AI data centers. Okay, so essentially what they're doing is they're shifting the budgeted line item from labor to infrastructure. And the shift is real, guys. The budget and talent shifting from routine and cloud support is being shifted and moved to AI and data center infrastructure. And this is one of the things I've noticed. I look at all the layoffs from all these companies, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, they're all laying off people in cloud services. So if you're in the cloud service business, you're already aware of this, that your job is at risk. That is a job that is certainly needs to move into AI and data center infrastructure. And the implications for American jobs are very, very significant. There are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of roles that are being eliminated. Within Oracle, it's looking like hundreds right now in United States domestically. There's also a geographic move. Oracle moved its headquarters to Tennessee. And this also shifts a signal from, hey, we're moving from less offshore labor to more onshore domestic labor. Moving it to Tennessee. You can say red state, blue state, whatever, all you want, but listen, they're building stuff in red states as far as I can see. Data centers are being built in Texas, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, which I guess is a purple state, is getting data centers. You're seeing that the infrastructure is going there, and you might, you can make whatever assumptions you like, and that's fine. I think that it's fair to make various assumptions. But anyway, these are the implications for American jobs. If you want the jobs, you're going to need to be where the data centers are being built. Also, side note, there's been a big push away from remote work. So you kind of need to duck and move and find the places to find where the work is. And again, those states I just mentioned are where data centers are being built. That's going to be a huge boom in employment there, because you have to realize that even if you're not an AI engineer or an architect, even if you're not totally clear on how to build data centers and construct data centers, there's going to be a lot of more work. So if you have 5,000 people moving to the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, they're going to need food, they're going to need healthcare, they're going to need educational service for their kids, they're going to need dog sitting, they're going to need all kinds of different services. So if you go to where the people are, that's where the money will be, right? And the jobs that are being created there are not like low-paying jobs. These are going to be a lot of high-paying jobs for AI architect and data center construction. So let's talk just a moment more about that. The implication for American jobs. The job displacement and job creation. So what's being cut? Software developers, support staff, project managers. What's new? AI engineering, systems architecture. Boom, right there. What's in trouble? Obviously, if you're being cut, but also in trouble is middle management, support roles. If you're fresh out of college, whew, man, you're in deep trouble. I just covered this the other day. I'll share a link to the video here. But college graduate unemployment rate has increased from 5.8% to 6.6% in just the past year. So, kids are going to college, taking $100,000 in debt, and they just can't find a job. They're going to be working at Chipotle. And that's obviously not where you want to be. You want to talk about systematic oppression. Having lifelong college debt that you can never get out of is pretty bad. So let's talk about what you can do, okay? I think we can establish that AI, infrastructure, governmental incentives, everything is shifting. Oracle's laying off hundreds of people domestically, thousands of people globally. And I don't see any reason why that will stop or slow. We talked about a bunch of other companies on this channel that are doing similar things, different ways, but similar. But here's what I would suggest you do if you're unsure about where you're at. The first thing, and I actually had a call with a guy the other day, that one of the things that you really should do is you need to learn how to use AI. If you're using a typewriter and everyone else is using a computer, you're going to be stuck. So one of the things I would encourage you to do is you try to start to strategize and think about where your opportunities lie and where your threats exist. Have a conversation with ChatGPT, guys. I mean, if you have ChatGPT, which is free to use, the basic version, it's like having a PhD in your pocket. Why would you not talk to your highly intelligent PhD assistant that's sitting right there in your pocket? So check out ChatGPT. And I just wanted to do for you, I'm going to put a prompt down below that's going to help you get started. Okay, I'll put a prompt down here in the comments. You can also get a bunch more prompts, a bunch more insights on my free newsletter at aiupdate.ai. That's aiupdate.ai. I'd appreciate you checking it out, reading, responding. I put a lot of effort and work into this, a lot of resources. So you can go to aiupdate.ai to get kind of updated with different prompts. But I'm going to put a prompt below that is going to essentially help you to figure out what your exposure is when it comes to the job market and the shifts in your specific market. Because right now, tip number 2, you have to upskill. You must upskill. You need to be, I think that the most valuable traits right now would be curiosity and adaptability. You need to be curious about what's changing. You need to be adaptable to the changes that exist. And someone the other day brought up another really good point. This is point 3, is owning assets. It's really hard to tell what's going to happen over the next 6 months, 6 years. So owning property, owning assets that generate income is a good place to be, guys. It's a good place to be, because if you're renting and you lose your job and then rent skyrockets, I don't have the solution for that. I don't have the solution for that. What I can say is that owning assets is good. And by the way, owning a car is not an asset. A car is a liability. A car depreciates over time. Okay, you want to own assets that generate additional streams of revenue, that generate cash flow, and or accumulate equity over time. It kind of builds value. Like the last home I owned, I purchased at 100. My wife and I purchased at 164,000. We sold it at 410. So that's a kind of example of owning something that accumulates in value. Okay. I also mentioned this is kind of like tip number 5 here: create additional streams of income. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. Invest in stocks, although that's more of an investment, but create side hustles, side businesses, buying and selling, garage sale arbitrage for all you Gary Vee fans. YouTube channel, although this doesn't generate a ton of income, I still love doing it. There's all sorts of different things that you can do. Build your personal brand, guys, because when you go onto the job market to find a new job or shift career or get hired, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to look at your personal brand. They're going to go to your LinkedIn, they're going to go to your Facebook, your Instagram. They're going to try to figure out who you are and what you're about. So you need to have a personal brand. Don't start trying to build your personal brand after you go on the job hunt. You want to have something that's more established before. It takes a long time to build your reputation. Okay, I actually recorded an entire video on this, on how you can get hired, on how crazy the job market is now, all the ghost jobs that are out there. You're competing not against humans, but AI agents. It's crazy. I'll post a link to that video here because I think you'll be shocked at what's happening in the job market for people that are trying to find jobs. It is crazy. And then listen, guys, this tip is big too. Build your network. You know, in that video, we found that if you are referred to a job, you are 4x more likely to get hired in that position. So this is a time where, you know, and this is something I think that we struggle with as men. We kind of like sit in our silos. Like we've got our direct family, our immediate family. Maybe we have a couple friends that, you know, we watch football with, whatever. But we tend to be siloed up. You know, we don't have like a whole pack around us. You know, make an effort this week. Call some people you haven't spoken to in a while. Try to increasingly build up those relationships. You know, it's really important, just as a man, to have a dog pack, but it's also going to be really important when you're trying to find a job. So guys, I just appreciate you watching the video. Life is crazy right now. Oracle, all these big software companies are just churning through employees. And I thought it was pretty interesting what's happening in India, laying off thousands of employees. And if you thought this video was interesting, you will be just equally shocked at what's happening in the gaming industry. For all my gamers out there, game development is just going crazy. You are not going to be able to find a job in game development in the next couple of years. It's just really insane what's happening there. I posted an entire video about it, what's happening in gaming, why it's awesome on one hand, but why it's also terrible on the other hand. I think you're going to really enjoy that video. Check it out here, and I'll see you. Peace.